The winter wind howled through the cemetery gates as Thomas, a millionaire widower in his 70s, made his weekly pilgrimage to his wife's grave. His Italian leather shoes crunched against the fresh snow, leaving solitary footprints in the pristine white blanket. Despite his wealth, these Thursday morning visits left him feeling as cold and empty as the marble monuments surrounding him. The morning sun cast long shadows across the headstones, and his breath formed small clouds in the frigid air. A sudden movement caught his attention. A stray cat darting between the graves, its orange fur stood out against the snow, leading Thomas's eyes to something unusual. A small figure huddled before a simple headstone. A boy, no more than 10, knelt in the snow, his thin jacket offering little protection against the brutal cold. Beside him, a white street cat sat sentinel, occasionally rubbing against the child's arm in a silent display of compassion. The sight stirred something in Thomas's heart, a pang of emotion he hadn't felt since losing his beloved Martha 2 years earlier. "You'll catch your death in this weather, son," Thomas called softly, his voice carrying on the wind. The boy startled, scrambling to his feet while the cat arched its back protectively, placing itself between the man and the boy. "I'm fine," the boy replied, though his trembling frame and chattering teeth betrayed the words. Up close, Thomas noticed the telltale signs of hardship: worn clothes, unwashed face, and a gauntness in his cheeks. The white cat pressed against the boy's legs, her body language a shield of quiet loyalty. "My name is Thomas," he said gently, maintaining a safe distance to avoid alarming the child. "I couldn't help but notice you've been here a while." The boy hesitated, suspicion flickering across his face, but exhaustion and grief won out. "I'm Alex," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. His gaze dropped to the grave. "This is my dad's. He died last month." Thomas's gaze followed Alex's to the simple headstone. Its dates etched freshly into the stone, the contrast struck him. Martha's lavish resting place, purchased with the wealth of a lifetime, and this humble marker that bore no less grief. "The cat," Alex said suddenly, his hand reaching down to stroke the animal's fur. "She found me the day after the funeral. She's been with me ever since," his voice cracked. "Dad called me his little hero because I always tried to help stray animals now. Now I'm the stray." The weight of the boy's words settled heavily on Thomas's chest. A homeless boy and a homeless cat, seeking shelter among the dead because the living had failed them. His own grief over Martha seemed small in the face of the boy's resilience. "Where's your mother?" Thomas asked gently, though the boy's downcast expression already hinted at the answer. "Cancer 3 years ago," Alex said, his voice heavy with a pain too old for his years. "Dad did his best, but the hospital bills," he trailed off, clutching the cat tighter. "He worked so hard, but his heart gave out. The neighbors tried to help, but when the house went..." Thomas watched as the white cat nuzzled Alex's hand, offering comfort with instinctive empathy. The bond between them was undeniable, a testament to the boy's kindness, even in the face of despair. "I have a warm car waiting," Thomas said carefully, recognizing the fragile thread of trust between them. "Maybe we could grab some breakfast. Your friend is welcome too." He gestured toward the cat, who eyed him with intelligent caution. Alex's expression wavered, suspicion battling against hope. The cat, as though sensing the boy's uncertainty, meowed softly and glanced between them, as if assessing Thomas herself. "I'm not looking for charity," Alex said, his pride clear. Despite his obvious hunger, Thomas reached into his coat, withdrawing a business card, and held it out with a gentle smile. "Not charity," he replied. "Let's call it a second chance. For both of us." The following morning, Alex sat huddled in the corner of an abandoned building, his makeshift shelter from the relentless cold. He traced the edges of Thomas's card in his hand, the warmth of their encounter lingering in his mind. Snowy, as he had named the cat, lay curled against his chest, her small body a source of both comfort and warmth. "You're all I've got now, Snowy," he whispered, stroking her soft fur. She had appeared like a ghost that first night in the cemetery, drawn to him by an unspoken understanding of his grief. Even in his hunger, Alex shared every scrap he found with her, their bond an unspoken promise to survive together. In the dim light filtering through boarded windows, Alex cradled Snowy, his fingers brushing through her soft fur as he tried to keep the brutal cold at bay. His mind wandered back to his father's last days in the hospital. "Be strong, my little hero," his dad had whispered, his voice a mix of pride and pain. "You've always had your mother's fighting spirit." The memory brought fresh tears to Alex's eyes, freezing almost instantly on his cheeks. Snowy's ears perked up suddenly, her street-smart instincts picking up on something Alex couldn't hear yet. She remained calm, even letting out a soft purr, as if to reassure him. Moments later, the sound of cautious footsteps echoed through the abandoned building. Alex's heart raced, but the cat's relaxed demeanor told him there was no immediate danger. Around the corner came Thomas, his expensive coat dusted with snowflakes. His expression held a mixture of determination and relief. "I've been searching every shelter in the area," he said gently, stopping at the doorway to avoid startling Alex. "The storm's getting worse, please. Let me help." Alex's hand tightened protectively on Snowy. "Why do you care?" he asked, his voice tinged with both suspicion and exhaustion. "Nobody else does. The social workers just want to take me away, split me from Snowy. She's all I've got left." Thomas took a step closer, his face softening with understanding. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything that matters. My wife, Martha. She taught me that wealth doesn't mean much if it can't be used to help others." Snowy, who had always been wary of strangers, surprised Alex by stretching and padding over to Thomas. She sniffed his coat, then rubbed against his legs, purring loudly. Her uncharacteristic display of trust startled Alex. "She's never done that before," Alex whispered, watching his feline protector, as though she'd betrayed years of caution. "She doesn't like strangers." "Animals can sense things we can't," Thomas replied, crouching to meet Snowy's gaze. "She's been your guardian angel, hasn't she, helping you survive?" Alex nodded, the memories of Snowy guiding him to safe sleeping spots and finding scraps of food flashing through his mind. "She saved my life," he admitted quietly. "That first night, I was so cold. She curled up on my chest and kept me warm." The wind howled outside, shaking the loose boards of the building. Thomas surveyed the desolate space, his eyes lingering on the makeshift nest of cardboard and tattered blankets Alex had constructed. "No child should have to live like this. No one should. My dad always said we were fighters," Alex said, his voice trembling from more than just the cold. "He worked 2 jobs after my mom died and never gave up. I have to be strong like him." "Being strong doesn't mean fighting alone," Thomas said, his tone firm but kind. "Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let others help us." Snowy returned to Alex, nudging his hand gently before glancing back at Thomas. Her calm, steady presence seemed to bridge the gap between the wary boy and the kind stranger. "I have a big house," Thomas said, his voice deliberate and steady. "It's too big for just one person. It gets lonely, especially in winter. There's plenty of room for both of you." Alex looked down at Snowy, meeting her gaze as if searching for reassurance. Her calm demeanor, as always, gave him strength. "You'd let her stay too?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Of course," Thomas replied with a warm smile. "She's your family, and every hero needs their sidekick." A particularly fierce gust of wind rattled the building, sending a cascade of snow through a hole in the roof. Alex shivered, and Snowy pressed closer to him, her warmth a small but steady comfort. "What do you say?" Thomas extended his hand, offering not just shelter, but hope. "Let's get you both somewhere safe." Alex looked around at the crumbling walls of the place he'd called home for the past few weeks. He hesitated, then turned to Snowy, who met his eyes with her knowing, steady gaze. With a deep breath, he took Thomas's hand. "Okay," he said softly. "But we stay together. Always," Thomas promised as he helped Alex to his feet. "That's what family is for." By the time Thomas returned to the abandoned building with his driver waiting outside, the temperature had dropped dangerously. The looming blizzard made navigating the snow-covered streets treacherous. But Thomas pushed forward, his concern for Alex outweighing his discomfort. "Alex," he called, his voice echoing in the empty space as he pushed through the heavy doors. Snowy's distressed meowing led him to the back room. What he saw froze him in place. Alex lay curled in the corner, his lips blue and his breathing shallow. Snowy was pressed against him, her small body trembling as she desperately tried to share what little warmth she had. "Alex!" Thomas rushed forward, his expensive coat already off and wrapping it around the boy. He felt for a pulse, weak and irregular, but still there. "Stay with me, son, stay with me." The boy's eyes fluttered open for a moment. "Snowy," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "She's right here," Thomas assured him, cradling Alex with a strength he hadn't felt in years. "We're getting you out of here." Snowy leapt to her feet. Following closely as Thomas carried Alex out into the blizzard, the snow was deep and each step felt like a test of his resolve, but Thomas refused to falter. When they reached the car, his driver opened the door, and Thomas carefully placed Alex inside the warm interior. Snowy jumped in immediately, curling protectively near the boy's head. "Hospital," Thomas commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. "And hurry." The emergency room burst into action the moment Thomas carried Alex inside. "Severe hypothermia," a doctor called out as nurses quickly surrounded the boy. "We need to warm him up gradually, get blankets and start an IV." One nurse hesitated as she noticed Snowy perched on Alex's lap, her wide eyes taking in the chaotic scene. "Sir, the cat can't—" "She's not leaving his side," Thomas interjected, his tone firm but calm. "That cat saved his life before I found him, and she's staying with him now." Something in his voice, perhaps the quiet authority of a man accustomed to leadership, ended the discussion. The nurse merely nodded, stepping aside to focus on Alex. Through the night, Thomas sat vigil by Alex's bedside. Snowy curled on a chair nearby, her steady purring filling the quiet moments. Even the hospital staff, initially skeptical of the cat's presence, softened as they observed how calm she kept Alex, her gentle presence seeming to stabilize him. As dawn broke, Alex stirred, his eyes fluttered open, and his hand instinctively reached out. Snowy was there immediately, pressing her small head into his palm. "Mr. Thomas." Alex's voice was weak but filled with relief as he spotted the older man sitting nearby. "I'm here, son," Thomas replied, moving closer. "You gave us quite a scare." "Us," Alex whispered, his gaze shifting to Snowy, who sat contentedly by his side. "Your guardian angel hasn't left you for a moment," Thomas said, a smile softening his words. "She's quite the hero." Tears welled in Alex's eyes as he gently stroked Snowy's fur. "Just like you," he murmured, looking up at Thomas. "You saved us." The weight of those words hit Thomas with an unexpected force. In all his years of building an empire and acquiring wealth, no words of gratitude had ever moved him more. When the doctor arrived for her rounds, her prognosis was optimistic. "You're a very lucky young man," she said, checking Alex's vitals. "Between this gentleman's quick action and your feline nurse's dedication, you're making a remarkable recovery. A few more hours in that cold." She left the sentence unfinished, the implication clear. Alex looked up at Thomas, hesitation flickering in his eyes. "Why did you come back for me?" he asked, his voice trembling with both vulnerability and disbelief. Thomas sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to disturb the IV lines. "Because 30 years ago, someone took a chance on me when I was at my lowest. They taught me that even small acts of kindness can change a life." "I've spent years building wealth, Alex. But what good is it if I can't use it to help someone who needs it?" Snowy began purring softly, as if sensing the weight of the conversation. The sound filled the room, offering a comfort that no words could provide. "What happens now?" Alex asked, the uncertainty of his future creeping into his voice. Thomas placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "Now, we make sure you never have to face the cold alone again, both of you," he said, glancing at Snowy. The cat blinked slowly, a gesture that seemed to convey understanding. "But the system," Alex started, his body tensing. "Let me handle that," Thomas said firmly. "I made a promise. To you, to Snowy, and to myself. Some bonds are meant to be preserved." The morning sun filtered into the hospital room, its warmth reflecting the hope that had begun to bloom. In that moment, 3 lives, Thomas, Alex, and Snowy, were forever intertwined. The sound of tires crunching over the snow brought a sense of relief as Thomas's car pulled into the circular driveway of his stately home. The towering windows glowed warmly against the winter evening, promising comfort and safety. Alex sat stiffly in the back seat, Snowy nestled securely in his lap. His wide eyes took in the grandeur of the estate, though his expression remained cautious. "You'll be staying here for now," Thomas said, opening the car door and helping Alex out. "I've already had a room prepared for both you and Snowy." Alex hesitated, clutching the cat closer. "Just for now." Thomas crouched to his level, his voice steady but kind. "For as long as you need, son. No one's rushing you out." Inside, the house was a world apart from the harsh winter outside. Plush carpets muffled their footsteps, and roaring fireplaces cast a warm glow in every room. Alex followed Thomas tentatively, his every movement careful, as if afraid to disturb the peace of the place. Snowy, however, hopped down from his arms and began exploring immediately, her curiosity outweighing her usual caution. A housekeeper appeared, her warm smile easing Alex's unease. "Welcome home, young man. Dinner will be ready shortly." The words home and welcome hung in the air, foreign yet strangely comforting. Alex trailed after Thomas to a spacious room with soft blankets on the bed, a window overlooking snow-covered gardens, and a small bed for Snowy near a radiator. The cat claimed it immediately, curling up as if she had lived there all her life. "This is for me." Alex's voice wavered with disbelief. "Yes," Thomas said with a gentle nod. "You're not a guest here, Alex. You belong." In the following days, Alex adjusted slowly. Thomas provided warm meals, clean clothes, and patient reassurances, but years of loss and mistrust had built walls around the boy's heart. Snowy became a bridge, her playful antics drawing out smiles. Alex tried to hide. One evening, as the fire crackled in the library, Thomas shared his own story. "I lost my wife 2 years ago," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "Martha was my world. Losing her, it broke something in me." Alex, curled in a chair with Snowy in his lap, listened intently. "You seem so strong," he said quietly. Thomas smiled faintly. "Strength doesn't mean not breaking. It means finding the courage to keep going, even when it feels impossible." For the first time, Alex felt a connection that went beyond kindness. Thomas wasn't just a stranger offering charity. He was someone who understood loss, someone who could help him heal. Alex, curled in a chair with Snowy on his lap, listened intently. "You seem so strong," he said softly. Thomas chuckled, his smile tinged with melancholy. "Strong doesn't mean unbreakable. Grief has a way of humbling even the strongest of us." For the first time, Alex felt a connection that went beyond kindness. Thomas wasn't just a wealthy stranger offering charity. He was someone who truly understood loss. "Dad always said we had to keep going, no matter what," Alex murmured, his gaze dropping to Snowy. "But sometimes I don't know how." Thomas leaned forward, meeting Alex's uncertain gaze. "You don't have to do it alone, Alex. Strength comes in letting others help you too." As winter wore on, the bond between Thomas and Alex grew stronger. Thomas embraced the role of a father figure, teaching Alex practical skills and encouraging his love for animals. Snowy, always the steadfast companion, became a central part of their new family, her playful antics often drawing out Alex's guarded smiles. One snowy afternoon, Alex joined Thomas in the study, nervously shifting his weight from foot to foot. "I want to stay," he said finally, his voice trembling with both fear and hope. "But only if Snowy stays too." Thomas smiled warmly, his heart swelling with pride. "I wouldn't have it any other way." By the end of winter, Alex no longer flinched at the word home. The house was no longer just Thomas's mansion. It had become their sanctuary. Snowy claimed every sunny spot. Alex's laughter echoed through the halls, and Thomas smiled more than he had in years. What began as an act of kindness had transformed into something far greater, a family born of compassion, courage, and trust. When spring arrived, the stately home buzzed with new energy. The once quiet monument to Thomas's grief now thrived with warmth and laughter. Alex had blossomed, his confidence growing with each passing day, and the bond between him, Thomas, and Snowy had become unshakable. Inspired by their transformation, Thomas sought to extend kindness beyond their home. He avoided grand gestures, opting instead for personal, meaningful acts. One afternoon, he took Alex and Snowy to a local shelter. Together, they met families struggling to rebuild, individuals burdened by loss, and children who reminded Thomas of Alex. "These aren't just numbers," Thomas said as they left the shelter. Snowy perched proudly in Alex's arms, her head held high. "They're people, just like you and me. Small acts of kindness can make all the difference." Alex's gaze lingered on the shelter's doorway, his expression thoughtful. "I want to help too," he said with quiet conviction. "Dad always said we should try to make the world a little better, even if it's just for one person." Thomas's heart swelled at Alex's use of Dad. The word had come naturally, a sign of how deeply their bond had grown. "Then let's start small," Thomas encouraged. "Even Snowy's smallest gestures helped you through your hardest days." That evening, Alex sat at the kitchen table, sketching ideas for ways he could help others. Snowy curled beside him, her rhythmic purring filling the quiet room. "Maybe I could work with animals," Alex mused aloud. "Like Snowy. There are so many strays out there, just like her." Thomas, reading the newspaper nearby, nodded thoughtfully. "Animals have a way of bringing people together," he said, pointing to an article. "Look at this." The headline read, "A cat named Snowy, a symbol of survival and hope." The article detailed Snowy's role in saving Alex, capturing the hearts of readers and raising awareness about homeless children and abandoned animals. The story, written by a reporter who had met them at the hospital, quickly gained attention in the community. "She deserves it," Alex said, resting a hand gently on Snowy's head. "She's the bravest one of all." The recognition brought visitors to their home, eager to meet Snowy and hear Alex's story. Though initially shy, Alex found his voice, sharing how Snowy had been his lifeline during his darkest days. "She never gave up on me," he told one guest. "And because of her, I didn't give up on myself." These conversations gave Alex a sense of purpose. He began volunteering at the shelter, using his experiences to connect with children and animals alike. His resilience and compassion became an inspiration to everyone he met. Meanwhile, Thomas quietly worked to formalize their bond. One morning, as cherry blossoms bloomed in the garden, he handed Alex an envelope. "I've been thinking about this for a while," he said, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Open it." Alex unfolded the papers inside, his eyes widening as he read. "Adoption," he whispered, looking up at Thomas. "I want to make it official," Thomas said, his voice breaking slightly. "You're already my son in every way that matters. This just makes it permanent." Tears welled in Alex's eyes as Snowy jumped onto his lap, nuzzling his chin. I'd like that," Alex said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Dad." The adoption hearing was simple yet profound. The judge, visibly moved by their story, signed the paperwork with a warm smile. "You're a lucky young man, Alex," she said, "and it seems you've made this family something truly special." As they left the courthouse, Alex turned to Thomas. "I used to think I'd always be alone," he said, "but now I have you and Snowy, and maybe we can help others, so no one else has to feel like I did." Thomas placed a hand on Alex's shoulder, pride radiating from him. "That's exactly what we'll do," he said. "Together. Give a like,